Clayton from Advantage Athletic Therapy. Where are you guys located again? I can't even remember the new address.
381 Cedar Street.
In Simcoe, Ontario. That's correct? My question today is because we talk so much about different injuries with sports and how folks can recover, but I wanted to get your thoughts on this because you're specifically Norfolk. Let's say a lot of your clients. What are the top 5 sports injuries you're seeing in Norfolk? I mean, you've been doing this a number of years, so be upfront with us. Be honest. Tell us what's going on.
Top 5 sports injuries. That's a good question. I would say number one, you're going to see is a lot of ankle sprains. I see a lot of like overuse injuries, whether it be like golfer's elbow or tennis elbow, like the tendonitis, rotator cuff. We'll go.
Rotator cuff? That kind of surprises me.
It does something that a lot of people associate with like throwing sports.
Right.
But it can be a repetitive overuse injury, or it can be even related to like poor posture and then always doing tasks and kind of not being in like the best ergonomical position, and then it's going to create friction, and then over time we're starting to cause pain there. I think that's 3. 4 would be, I would say, like back injuries, whether it be like a disc injury from like sudden impact, or it could be like a rugby player getting caught up in a pile and like a forced like torsion or stretch. And then I see a lot of like sciatic and gluteal pain as well. Like, so that pain in like buttocks, like traveling down the leg, very common, whether it's in athletes or like general population. Everybody can kind of be susceptible to that based on like positions at work, sitting, driving all the time. And a lot of these injuries can be prevented with proper care beforehand, whether it be stretching, strengthening, or even like evaluating where your deficits are. If you're always tight in your quads, you're more susceptible to having a hamstring injury, for example. So things like that, and looking at like your muscular imbalances is very important. And then incorporating a stretching and strengthening program can help benefit and decrease injury.
One of the ones I looked at that I was checking out for North America. One of the ones that I saw on this list that I wanted to ask you about was number 5 in a lot of cases was concussions.
Definitely see a lot of concussions. And I think there's a little bit of misconception with how concussions occur, and that it's only, people think concussions, it's football or hockey. And for sure, high impact sports, but general population can suffer from concussions as well, whether it be car accident, trips or falls. Those are the things that we kind of don't, or we take for granted, that you fell down, maybe you don't remember what happened, it happened so fast, but it's like that goose egg on your head, like that's there for a reason. And then it's always great to be aware of symptoms like light sensitivity, headaches, dizziness, confusion. Like those are things that you need to kind of take into account. And yeah, concussions can happen to anybody.
Now that list that you gave me, do you find that that's more streamlined towards older athletes? Not that I'm saying me, but do you, I mean, obviously with age, you've got to be more prepared. You know what I mean? 50, 60, 70, different injuries occur quicker, or, swelling occurs almost every time, right?
Well, and I think with a lot of it is that younger athletes that are, let's say, in that 12 to 16 year old range, more pliable and they recover faster. So
Yeah.
something that may set me or you back a couple weeks, they get over in a couple days. So then maybe it doesn't get to that chronic stage where they're really dealing with it, and that would probably be the difference there.
Last question, couple things here. And you don't have, I mean, I'm curious which sports you're seeing the most injuries in. I don't want to put any sports under the bus, but I'm just curious what you're seeing and what, in that realm with the younger generation. Let's look at it that way first.
Younger generation, honestly, I see a lot. It's sport dependent and like season dependent, right? Like, so in the
Right.
winter, we're seeing lots of hockey, lots of dance, lots of gymnastics. Dance and gymnastics, you would think kind of like fly under the radar, but the amount of time in studio and the demand on the body is exceptional. And I think people kind of understate how tough those are. And then in like the spring transition, you start to get into like your rugby, your soccer, your
Yeah.
track and field injuries. And then throughout the summer, it's a lot of general stuff. Norfolk definitely has lots of mountain biking going on.
Yeah.
So you see a couple injuries here and there with that. You got your beach volleyball, and yeah,
Oh,
then it's
yeah.
kind of just a big variance. And then in like the older population, I would say you see a couple curling injuries, whether
Oh,
it be slips or falls on the ice or repetitive stuff, just like maybe moving the rock the wrong way. Then you get into like your slow pitch golf, and number one now is pickleball. Lots of
it's
pickleball injuries as it's starting to explode in Norfolk County, which is a great sport. So it's good to see that there's more people
it's
playing it.
it's funny. Me and Paige did a show a couple of months ago on that, and she was telling me about just that how it's ramped up so much in the last year with the pickleball injuries, right? That aging population playing, and it's great. People need to get out and be active. That's the number one. You got to stay active, but you
Oh,
got to remember, right, with these
100%.
injuries.
My one recommendation there would be if you're gonna get out and be active, have a proper warm up, nice
Mhm.
dynamic warm up, get that blood flowing, get the muscles used to the tension as opposed to going from like in the car out to the court, and that stops you from coming in to see us. So that's great.
The other one I always throw in there is hydrate. The people just don't hydrate enough.
Definitely, and especially with the heat we've been having here, it's been pretty incredible. So yeah, hydration and even just general nutrition. The better you eat, the better you're gonna feel, and the less injury is gonna happen.
I got to ask too because you brought this up, but dance and gymnastics. So what are you seeing there?
A lot of ankle injuries, knee, and it's repetitive stuff. Like I have a couple um, dancers and gymnasts that are in the studio or in the gym like 16 to 20 hours a week. It's
Oh my goodness!
basically like a part-time job, especially with that the competitive dance. So there's a lot that goes into it, and even with dance, especially and I guess gymnastics as well. Like concussions are always an option there. There's aerial stunts. There's in gym
Yeah.
like gym, you're doing the vault, you're doing bars, falling off the beam. Like there's lots of opportunities for injuries there.
This is my last thing. We got to talk about this because guess what starts this month? This is a July show, Summer Olympics.
That's right.
Are you ready?
Oh, I'm excited. Love watching the Olympics.
Me too. You get hooked in, right? The stories in the background, like you're just. I always just every morning it's on when it's on, and I feel like at the end it's like I'm losing a bunch of friends.
Oh, 100%. And there's always cool storylines that, like, especially with, like, obviously we pay more attention to the Canadians. Like, it was
Yeah,
Alexiak a few ago, and then you had, like, DeGrasse. And
yeah.
I'm always, my favorite event's always 100-meter finals, men's and women. So, really looking forward to that.
I like the marathon because it's always near the end or near the beginning of the Olympics, depending where it is. And that's something else that I think we really got to appreciate what these elite. And when you brought up about the gymnast and the dancers, 16 hours, like what these folks put into it, it's amazing. I've had an opportunity to hang out with some Olympians, and I'm just blown away. Like it's a whole different level, isn't it? Like you've probably had an opportunity to work with some of these folks, and it's incredible the time and the energy they put into it. So folks watch the Olympics.
Yeah, and I think it's stuff that we kind of take for granted, and especially with some of the obscure stuff that we don't really think about, like
Like the whitewater kayaking and the like those type of events, these guys train. Like this is the dream, right?
my thoughts are the best athletes in the world are those guys and girls that are playing water polo, because
Oh
how
yeah.
hard is it to to tread water for that amount of time and have people trying to drag you under and elbows here and shit? It's wild. It's a great sport.
Yeah, but and that's exactly it. So take your time. I mean, a shout out to all those athletes. Good luck and then do your best. Make Canada proud. But it's just when you get to see that on that level. I mean, I remember it's funny because I was reading a piece. In 1976, Greg Joy got a silver medal for Canada the second last day of the Olympics in high jump. And I was 12 years old, and me and my buddy had old mattresses and we started high jumping, right? Because that's what you did when you were 12, because that's the influence the Olympics have on kids, especially when you get to see those things. And that name always stuck with me. That's kind of that video memory in my brain of the Olympics, and all the way through Ben Johnson, all through all the scandals and all the but it's always that the drama that goes with it, and the performance of these folks is incredible. Gold medal, right? 2000 Salt Lake, right? It's just the Canada, the hockey team, just you're part of it. You become so wrapped up in all that stuff. And I think I agree. And from your perspective, working with athletes, you see the dedication these guys put in, correct?
Oh, definitely. And it's like that time in, and there's that expectation that you're going to get this out of it, but that's not always the case. There's only one winner, right? So it's a lot of these athletes kind of get lost in the fold there, but we should still really appreciate how much they put into it. And back to your point about talking about the silver medalist for the high jump, I remember as a kid, like Donovan Bailey, like he was
Yes.
the
In
man,
Atlanta.
right? Like that
Oh,
was
yeah, that
the
was so
guy.
cool.
Everyone on the playground wanted to be fast as Donovan Bailey.
And just remember that, I mean, I can't even imagine how many Canadians saw that race, right? Like everybody was just zoned in, right? It was like he had to win.
Yeah.
Like it was just, and I think it was Linford Christie that got defaulted in that race, I think, from England. It was kind of just a really bizarre start to that race. It's funny how you remember those things. And I think as kids too, I mean, that's the other promise that we should be putting forward, because kids need to see this. Like they need to see that there's, and I think the Olympics, I know, like you said, there can only be one winner, but the lessons learned from these games are incredible for these athletes as well. And it helps them. And you dedicate your life, and then maybe say you go to the Olympics and then you move on to other things, but you've already understand commitment and
Mm-hmm.
what it takes to succeed in things. And I think that's the part that we don't realize, that, most of these athletes, most of these Olympic athletes shine for a week, a month, and then they move on, right? But that dedication that might have been 10 years in the making for one day.
And they're also juggling the rest of their life too. Like they have
Yeah.
other jobs, right? It's not like they don't have the ability to just specifically train for one thing for the most part. Certainly there are some Olympians that are able to do that through sponsorship deals and
Yeah.
whatnot. But yeah, there's a lot of people that are grinding out there, and just getting to the Olympics is just such a huge accomplishment.
And when you brought up Penny in the last games, there's always that unknown that comes in and just blows up, right? Like that athlete that just shines through. That's their moment. And I think that's always cool, because you don't see it coming. You'll see all these great profiles on athletes that are amazing, but it's this unknown usually that steps up, that, takes the games by storm, that,
Well, and I bet
wins
you
it.
her life has been changed forever since
Yes,
those games,
for
right?
sure. Yeah. But I mean, that's the cool part about it. I mean, that's the great thing about the Olympics. We got way off track, but that's cool, because we're talking about athletes, and that's what our goal was today. But yeah, I look forward to it too. And it's just, we'll get together, I'm sure, again and talk about it. But it's always amazing. And the injuries that these guys, going into the games or during the games that they take on, eh? Like I can't even imagine training that long. Well, I know from not that caliber, but training for long races, and then a month out you get injured, and you're just mentally, it just crushes you, right?
Yeah, the anguish there must just be extreme. And I can't remember her name, um, but she was a hurdler for Canada, and she was like expected to win, or
Yes,
like, and then
Felicia. Oh, I
yeah,
can't remember. Yeah.
and she fell, and like I just remember thinking like, oh my goodness, like I can't imagine how you're feeling right now.
Well, you feel her pain, right?
Oh, for sure,
To a
and you're
degree, not nearly to that extent, but you're like, you're heartbroken for her, because
yeah.
that's what they put into it. And it's always fun watching. I always enjoy the marathons, because you just don't know. There's always an unknown factor that comes, in the men's and women's, that you're like, who is this person, right? I've never read, all of a sudden out of some country you've never heard of. And then it's just amazing to see. I was in Toronto once, and this is my last point, but I was doing the Toronto marathon. And I remember I'm going down one way, and the top 5 runners are coming back the other way. And I was just so in awe of seeing, like, these guys are Olympic athletes, right? They're the top in the world, and the glide and how quickly they were moving through. And I just like, we really don't understand it till we see it personally, right?
Hmm.
And then you're just like, like my jaw dropped. I was just in amazement at how smooth and fluid, and how, you're just like, oh my goodness, like, look at that. Like, that's just, it's not of this world, but that's the caliber you're going to get in the Olympics. That's the
That's right.
expectation.
Well, there's levels, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a good way to see it when they run by you.
Well, it's the other way. They're almost done, and I'm like, oh, I'm just trying to look at a Boston qualifier, right? But I think that's the other part of it, is enough people need to see and understand. And it's hard to see on the TV, because when you go and you see these events live, right? It just takes it to another level. I remember the first time I saw Shaq in like play live,
Mm-hmm.
and I could not fathom how big he was as a human being playing basketball. Like, you know what I mean? When you're 5 rows away and you're like, oh my goodness, like this guy's right. It's just a different perception. And I'm sure it's, you know, if you watch an NBA game from floor level, you know, it's just a different speed.
Oh, for sure. I've always been of the opinion that they should pick like one decent athlete from anywhere in the world, and they get to do all these events with the Olympians. So you can kind of put into perspective. You're like, yep, there goes Joe, and he's just getting blown by everybody else. Or it's high jump, and he's jumping 1.45 meters, and they're jumping 2 meters and 20
230.
centimeters. Yeah. So
Yeah.
something like that, I think, would be fantastic for the
I
viewers.
don't think some athletes would appreciate that. You know, that's the ego part when they would, yeah, I'm not going to compete with those guys, right?
Oh, somebody would do it. Somebody would get out there. Heck,
Well,
I'd give
there's,
it a shot. Sure,
yeah,
why not?
but I just the appreciation I think from what you do with athletes and what I've seen over the years watching athletes on live events is just incredible. It's just it's another level, right? And I think that's when you watch the Olympics, folks, take that into account that all the time the injuries these folks go through for that one moment is incredible.
I agree.
All right, hey, thanks for doing this. Great chat today. Take care. Eh?
Yeah, you as well.